This is New Zealand, located in the South Pacific Ocean, about 4,000 kilometers away from Australia, the world's second most peaceful country. New Zealand is globally famous for its vast mountain ranges, beautiful lakes, and high quality organic food. Some of you might already know that the famous movie, The Lord of the Rings, was also shot in New Zealand's scenic valleys. New Zealand's weather is very similar to the UK's: mild summers, long winters, and significant rainfall. Yet New Zealand's population is not even 7% of the UK's. If you look at this map of New Zealand, you'll see that about 80% of New Zealand is completely empty, with no inhabitants. 70% of New Zealand's population lives in the north, and even 50% of the north's population resides in one city, Auckland. Despite having such fantastic weather, stunning scenery, low crime rates, and a high standard of living, why is 80% of New Zealand uninhabited? Let's find out the answer to this question. The truth is, first, if we look at the world map, you'll notice that New Zealand is very far from the rest of the world. It means if you board a plane from India, you'd have to cross the entire Arabian Sea and Indian Ocean to reach New Zealand after a flight of around 18 to 22 hours. Now the question arises, how did humans reach this distant island from the rest of the world? Here, there are multiple views. If we visit New Zealand's official website, it states that approximately 1,000 years ago, between 1320 and 1350, the Maori people discovered New Zealand. The Maori were people living on all the islands of the Pacific Ocean, also called Polynesian Islands. According to official sources, around the 13th century, the Maori left these islands in large canoes and reached New Zealand. This was roughly the same era when the Mongols and Genghis Khan were controlling Eurasia. But the question arises, why did these people leave their old islands and come to New Zealand? To find the answer to this question, we researched some articles and found that the Maori's historical records have some differences. According to Maori traditions, New Zealand wasn't discovered in the 13th century, but about 500 years earlier, around 750 AD, by a Maori named Kupe. Kupe was a fisherman who caught fish for himself and his tribe. But then issues started arising, and the solution was that Kupe, along with a few others, would venture into the ocean to explore another island where there would be ample food supplies. During this search, Kupe took 20 to 25 men with him and set out into the Pacific Ocean. After a few days of travel, they spotted an island with huge mountains. This was New Zealand, an island rich in seafood, sheep, and fruits, where no other humans lived. It was the perfect place for Kupe and his tribe. Kupe sent a few companions back to the Polynesian Islands to inform others about this island. This is how the Maori people began to settle in New Zealand. Until the 17th century, the Maori lived peacefully in New Zealand, with no threats or enmities due to their isolation from the rest of the world. But this was about to change. This was when Western nations were expanding their power worldwide, sending explorers to discover islands, countries, and continents they could seize to enhance their power. In this context, a Dutch explorer, Abel Tasman, set out to explore a continent in the southern Pacific Ocean because Europeans at the time believed there must be a continent in this region. If such a continent existed, it would open many opportunities for European countries. In 1642, Tasman discovered New Zealand. But when he tried to land there, he had a fierce and bloody confrontation with the Maori people, forcing him to flee. Then, in 1769, a British officer, James Cook, arrived in New Zealand searching for the same continent. Again, James and his soldiers had a fierce battle with the Maori, resulting in the deaths of many Maori chiefs. James Cook had to return, but this time he created a detailed map of New Zealand and the entire journey. Using this map, Europeans began reaching the island in the 18th century. This time, they dealt with the Maori people smartly, luring them with trade and profits. In 1840, A treaty called the Treaty of Waitangi was signed between the British and the Maori, officially making New Zealand part of Europe and the British Empire. At that time, the Maori population was around 200,000, but in the next 100 years, this population declined from 200,000 to 40,000. The two main reasons were when Europeans arrived, they brought diseases common in Europe. The problem was that the Maori people hadn't developed immunity to these diseases, which caused many locals to fall ill and die. Secondly, in the 19th century, New Zealand became a very violent place. Just 5 years after the Treaty of Waitangi, a series of wars began between the British and the local Maori over land ownership, lasting 40 years. Many Maori were killed in these wars. Finally, this entire series ended in 1881 when all major Maori chiefs were killed, and the Maori movement was severely crushed. The British also realized that development could not progress without including locals. Hence, immediately after the wars, the British government made locals key stakeholders in every development project. From the electorate process to every development project, this marked the beginning of peace and progress in New Zealand. Still, as shown at the start of the video, much of New Zealand remains uninhabited, and most people live in the Northern Island. The southern region of New Zealand is entirely empty because living or constructing there is nearly impossible. New Zealand's southern part is covered with mountain ranges, where the terrain is so uneven that even building basic infrastructure like roads is almost impossible. Beyond the mountains, the eastern side's land is very dry and infertile, making irrigation almost impossible. This is why the majority of New Zealand's population resides in the Northern Island. To address the population shortage, the New Zealand government relaxed immigration policies after World War II. Before the war, non-white people were prohibited from entering New Zealand, resulting in stagnant population growth until the 1950s. After this restriction ended, people from Asia, especially China, the Philippines, and India, started settling there. Finally, New Zealand experienced much-needed population growth. Today, almost 27% of New Zealand's population comprises immigrants or people born outside New Zealand. Most immigrants live in Auckland and nearby areas, making Auckland one of the world's least affordable cities due to limited land supply and high housing demand. To solve this issue, the New Zealand government now offers grants of up to $8,000 to encourage people to move 100 kilometers away from Auckland to Waikato, reducing pressure on Auckland's housing market and normalizing prices. One fascinating fact is that New Zealand's entire agriculture industry relies on animal meat exports. Due to the lush green lands in the Northern Island caused by rainfall, countless sheep and cows are raised here. New Zealand's population is approximately 5 million, while an estimate suggests that there are around 30 million sheep. Hence, New Zealand is the world's largest exporter of mutton and sheep wool. 95% of New Zealand's meat is exported, and in 2019, this export generated $46 billion in revenue for New Zealand. New Zealand is the world's 50th largest economy, and its primary source of revenue is agricultural exports. Earning $46 billion solely from meat exports is unbelievable. If you enjoyed today's video, please like it and subscribe to the Knowledge Nexus. These are all the sources we consulted for this video. See you in the next video. Take care. Goodbye.